I would say, yeah, complain, bad, but there's a lot of good about Twitter. What's the good about Twitter for people in the investment world?
Yeah, I think the speed at which you get people digesting and explaining the relevance of news is the key thing. Look, like headlines are great, and it's really, Twitter's a great place to see like when something breaks, and you can find it'll hit there very fast. But then the real value, I think, comes from people digesting it, explaining what it means.
Or links or whatever.
And then that's also awesome. Just like the relevant stories is also fantastic.
Best thing on Zames, young Zames over at JP Morgan is some zero hedge off of what Max Abelson did. All of that out in links on Twitter. Michelle, you look at your world of footnoted.com. It's the same thing. It's breaking down the walls of how we distribute news, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, you know, you're seeing, I mean, I would also agree, Twitter's a great thing. I mean, I've become addicted as well. But, you know, you got to wonder when you start seeing these companies that are starting to disclose this material information, they're saying they're going to disclose material information this way, how many people are going to really be able to keep up with that stuff?
And on that note, you know, the SEC, I know we talked to you about this major decision from the Securities and Exchange Commission. Zillow, a real estate company that recently IPO'd, is going to actually take its first quarter questions during the conference call on Twitter and Facebook.
Interesting.
Okay, they take their conference call. I'll get that on Twitter. But this is critical, Joe. Are we going to see corporate news released on Twitter if some old fart like me isn't on Twitter?
Well, I mean, when I hear about that, I always wonder, and there is a concern there, like who's on Twitter. But on the other hand, like who goes to sec.gov? So, I mean, if you file, if you put, I mean, besides Michelle, but if you know, I saw when, you know, they reprimanded they scolded the Netflix CEO for putting something on Facebook, but I'm sure infinitely more people would see it on Facebook than if he had slipped that same.
Okay, let's look at this note. Let's look at this note, Joe, from Michelle later in footnoted.com, because this is the smartest thing I've seen on this Twitter debate right now. It's hard to imagine a scenario where a company posts news items that could potentially impact the company's stock price without an attorney/general counsel reviewing that item. Here's the key thing. Very carefully. I mean, this is about general counsels, isn't it?
You would think that the CEO can't just go, you know, say whatever he wants to say that could potentially move the stock without someone, an attorney somewhere reviewing it, whether it's the GC, whether it's the external counsel. And to me, that kind of breaks down the immediacy of Twitter.
Yeah, I don't get
You know, because if you have to first, I mean, have you ever seen an attorney move all that quickly? You know?
Well, this is really all about trust and false information and how many tweets are actually fake. Look at what happened last week with the AP account getting hacked. I mean, how many Twitter accounts are hacked and the Dow absolutely plunges on a fake headline about the White House?
Yeah, I think there are going to be instances here and there, but you know, sometimes the news wires get hacked. Things happen, but on the whole, it's not that bad. Sure, people are going to get hacked, CEOs are going to get hacked, company accounts, but on the whole, it doesn't happen too much. It doesn't seem to happen much more than any other system.
The other side, which both of you represent in different ways, is after the news, the speed of intelligent criticism. To me, I may disagree with Chrystia Friedland or Joe Weisenthal or whoever, David Stockman coming up on surveillance, but there's a debate instantly now within your and my world.
Yeah, and that's the part that I like the best. I mean, as I said, like, the headlines and the speed are great, but what I really enjoy is how quickly the debate happens on a topic. A GDP report comes out, how quickly people take apart different things. Oh, look, it was government spending that was weak, and demand was okay, and you get that breakdown.
Or Apple.
Hey, that's what we do on surveillance.
Yeah, Apple earnings. Apple earnings, I thought, Michelle, was just fascinating.
Yeah.
It's a new world when you look at how that's sliced and diced.
Yeah, I mean, people come up with all sorts of different pieces of it, and you can really get a lot more intelligent from that because, you know, maybe somebody else, there's a lot of people who have insight that maybe I don't have, and maybe I'm chiming in on my insight on, you know, something in the SEC filing.
Michelle, folks like Joe have really mastered this idea, but what about companies? How adept are they at using Twitter beyond just for marketing purposes?
Haven't seen a lot of companies be all that adept at it. I mean, I think that it's a little bit clunky still, and I think that comes back to what we were talking about before with the general counsel. I mean, you know, the CEO is not just going to. I think it's very rare CEO is just going to post a tweet without reviewing it past the GC. There's just too much on the line.
Sarah, someone you and I know, Kit Jukes, during Cyprus, said, screw this. He said Saturday morning, what, 8 a.m. was the news?
Yeah.
And Kit Jukes' SocGen is out on Twitter, I would suggest, before his clients saw it.
Well, that raises another question, Joe. Strategists and economists, some of them tweet.
Yeah, they're getting more into it.
A lot of them aren't allowed.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it seems like actually the European ones they seem to have a little more flexibility, but more and more of them are getting on Twitter and debating things on Twitter, which is awesome. But it is going to raise some issues about maybe the clients are going to feel like they're not getting
or if they have to have compliance check it before
that's
they
also
tweet.
going to be an issue. And I think like the street is still figuring it out. And a lot of the people who are active on Twitter I suspect are kind of in a
Hedge
gray
funds
area.
are not on Twitter.